This video covers the IGCSE Biology Objective 9.3.1 on the 2025 CAIE syllabus to describe the structure of arteries, veins, and capillaries. So let's start with an artery. So this is a diagram of an artery, and we can see that there are basically four parts to any type of blood vessel, with one exception. So we have this thick outer layer of collagen, and underneath that there's a very thick inner layer of muscle, which is slightly elastic, so that way it can move with the blood flow. Then there is a single layer of cells, which are called endothelium cells. It just means an inside layer of cells, and as you can see, it's one layer thick. And then there is a narrow central lumen. The lumen merely is just the passageway, the hole, if you will, for the blood to pass through. This is quite small comparatively to the size of the tube itself. If you look here, you can actually see a microscope slide of an artery, and you can see that the lumen compared to the size of the blood vessel is quite small. Next, we'll take a look at veins. Veins have a similar layered structure to arteries. There is an outer layer of collagen, which is quite thin. Then we have an inner layer of muscle, again elastic, but also quite thin. And then we have the endothelium, which is one layer thick, that inside lining of the tube. And then the lumen itself is extremely wide compared to the size of the tube. Additionally, in veins, we have valves, and you can see in the animation that the outer muscles, the muscles outside the vein tube, are going to squeeze and push the blood and the valves open in order to move the blood through the body. And here we have, again, a microscope slide of a vein, and you can see that the lumen is quite large compared to the size of the blood vessel itself. Then we are looking at capillaries. So capillaries are a little bit different compared to arteries and veins. They don't have all of those structures that we just talked about. They have something called a basement membrane, which at this level of biology is not really important. And then we have the endothelial layer, that one layer of cells. So really, a capillary is just made up of this one layer of cells. And there are three different types of capillaries, but for your purposes, we're really interested in the one that has the intercellular gaps, this third one on the right-hand side. So some of the things that we can say, some of the descriptors about capillaries are that they have a small diameter, they are one cell thick, and they can contain pores or gaps. But like I said, for us at this level, we're interested in the gaps, and that will become more clear as we go through the syllabus a little bit later. Here we have a microscope slide of the capillary. You can see there that central one, the one that seems to be a bit more rounded, is indeed only one cell thick. You can see those cells have the nucleus, and that's it. The other blood vessels that we just need to consider very briefly are arterioles, shunts, and venules, as depicted here on the diagram. We have an arteriole, we have a capillary bed, which we already know what the capillaries look like. Then we have a venule and a shunt vessel. So the arterioles are basically smaller arteries. So the structure will be exactly the same, except a little bit smaller. They're going to lead from the arteries to the main arteries to the capillary beds. The arterioles will just get smaller and smaller and smaller until they reach the capillary bed. And the cell tissues, this is going to reduce the blood pressure of the tube itself, which is important because we don't want blood at high pressure in the capillary. The venules are smaller veins that lead from the capillaries to cell tissue, and they would just get larger and larger and larger until the blood vessel becomes a vein. Now, shunts are a little bit different. A shunt is basically a connection tube between an arteriole and a venule. It's going to allow blood to bypass the capillary bed to move quickly through the tissue, and we will see where shunts come into play as we move through the syllabus a little bit later on in our studies. So that takes us through the types of blood vessels that you would find in the human body.